So we're going to do the backhand, so it's important that we get the curvature this way. The back of a hand is round, got a curvature to it, so you've got to create that shape. The next thing you got to look at is there is distinct, I call them flat spots. There's distinct areas on there that you have to create. And the first one is if there's a ball in the hand, can you see that there's a one distinct shape here, and then you got to create this edge here, and then as it comes up and these fingers bend, then you create various shapes. So the distance from here, from there to the first set of knuckles are about half the distance. So this, if you divide this distance here in half, then you create this distance here. Okay, so we got to get a plane this way, a plane that way, and then it's not as critical, but these two, there's one plane here, another plane here as that comes up. The thumb and the back of the hand will be against the body, so you don't have to carve that in. Don't have to even pay attention to that. We're just going to pay attention to this shape of the hand here. So if you kind of envision it like that, so it's curved this way, yes, but more or less flat. A flat plane here, a flat plane here, there and there. So if you start measuring them out and try and mark it on the carving itself, that'll kind of give you a better idea. So let's just do that. I'll go ahead and mark that. Okay, so what I did was, the first thing I did was I went to the other hand and I measured the distance from where I thought the wrist would break on the other hand, and so I got a distance there. So then I went around to this side here and measured it, and I found that on my carving anyway, that the distance ended up being a little bit further along than what I thought it would be. So that's the break in the wrist. So then if I turn it up, then you can see I want to get a flat spot here. So I look at this and I see that looks a little bit too long, so I'm going to bring that back a little bit. So this area here is going to be a flat spot, and then I'm going to start my knuckles changing back here. I use my big gouge once again. This has got the right curvature. It's a number 5, 20 millimeter. So I'm going to create a flat spot there, a flat spot there, and a flat spot to create the various features. I'll do that and then I'll pass it around. So isn't that really simple? And so there's the flat spots. So you got the back of the hand there, up to the first set of knuckles, next set of knuckles, and there. And you can see that the fingers may be a little bit long there. If you want to turn them up more, you can turn them up more. But the hand can be relatively flat in order to hold the ball. Again, the thumb isn't there, but it can be relatively flat. It doesn't have to be hanging on to the ball. It can just have the ball in his hand. So whatever shape you decide for those fingers is up to you. In the diagram, you can see that they really turn the knuckles right up. On mine, I did a little bit, but not a great deal. Again, don't worry about the ball. We'll make the ball fit the hand. All right, so that's basically it. So now we've got to shape the inside of the hand a little bit where it touches the body. I'll use a V-tool in there to clean that up to give me a nice edge. Try and keep that relatively flat through there so that you can work on the details in the hand. So I'll do that. I'll dress that up right now. Maybe turn his bum here a little bit so that I can create the inside of those fingers in there. So it's all attention to detail, basically. And you can see I start to get critical at this point in time with my own carving. So now you can see that it doesn't seem to want to turn the back of that hand in to the inside of the body. Now you might never ever see that unless somebody picked it up and put it in their hand, but I want to curve that hand so that it goes back into the body. And so I certainly missed it in there, in that area there. Now that looks a lot better. So that now I still got the small ends of the finger here, that set of knuckles, and this set of knuckles are there. It goes back, and now I want to concentrate on the wrist. The wrist has to break. In other words, you have to have a break, and if you take a look at a wrist, it can turn in a multitude of different ways, can't it? So it narrows down at the wrist. I like to keep the flat part of the hand more or less the same all the way down the sides, but then break it right at the wrist, get it narrow at the wrist. So that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to just spend a bit of time, and I'll use a gouge upside down. I could still be using my big gouge, but I want to turn that. So now I'm going to get a straight line up to the elbow. I can massage this a little bit better later. But there's the break in my hand, from the hand to the wrist. Boy, that's hard to see, isn't it? Yeah, maybe that's the best angle there. So there is the end of my hand right there, and then up comes breaks for the wrist and up towards the elbow. So that's a critical part. So the method here is to finish as much of the hand as you possibly can, and that means the outside, because you can't see the inside because the ball is going to be there, but you don't carve the ball until you get the hand shaped the way you want it. Once you're comfortable with that, which I am now, there's just a bit of fine stuff to do here. I got a sharp edge here that I got to get rid of, but I can divide that now. I can start to look at where the fingers are going to be on that and start to divide it up. So in order to divide it up, the knuckles, the fingers start just below the knuckle. Can you see there's the knuckle? Here's the knuckle first, and then the separation in the fingers are below that. It doesn't start up here. It starts below the knuckle, and then it comes down. So I divide the hand in half, so that gives me the center line, and then I divide this distance in half, and in this case the little finger is going to be against, or the big finger is going to be against the side of the body, and so you can bury that in the body somewhat if you didn't think you had enough width. But anyway, so that divides this distance in half, and then this is divided in half, and this distance here is divided in half. So it's half, half, and half. So just finger that. Just remember that the knuckles start, or the division starts below the knuckles. So there's the first one. Divide that distance in half, and I might move that in just a bit, but that kind of gives you the idea. So there's your four fingers. 1, 2, 3, 4. 3 lines. And then once you get that division there, then you just continue that straight up, and that creates the rest of your fingers. And there they are. Just that simple. And I use a V-tool to put the fingers in. I use a small V-tool. And then if rather than use a knife, if you use a knife in there, you're committed to it. But if I use a V-tool, and if I need to widen one finger one way or the other, I can still do that. So we've got the fingers identified by using a V-tool, and that just identifies them. But you'll notice that the fingers are even straight across. Okay, so if you bend a finger, and again this is the wrong hand, but if you bend a finger or your hand, it comes up. They do tend to straighten out somewhat, as opposed to like that. Okay, so as you bend them, they tend to come further together. However, the little finger always is a little bit shorter, and so is the index, or the outside finger. The two middle ones can be more or less the same. So in order to accommodate or address that, I'm going to use this is a number 5 millimeter, and it's got a curvature on the end of it. There, can you see that? And so how I do that is I simply come into the end of it and I start dividing my fingers up. So I'm going to have create the end of my fingers. And I'll just push this in so you can have an idea. Maybe shorten this one here a little bit more. Now if I zoom in a little bit on that. There. Can you see that? So now I've addressed the shape of the end of the fingers, and I've also created the illusion that the inside and the outside fingers are a little bit shorter. Looks like I could turn this one a little bit more. That's a little better. Okay, so that's really a simple way. Now I use that one there, but I also quite often will use a number 7. This is a number 7 6 millimeter, and it does the same thing. And the only problem with that is I can do the inside and the outside, but this one here actually is the right size as far as being able to work in there. The trick was to get the outside of the hand done first, and once we've got that shape established and we're fairly comfortable with that, I mean there's a bit more refining to do with it. Now we can work on the ball. Now is it going to be a hard ball, like a small ball, or is it going to be a soft ball? So if you're going to make it work in the hand itself, so right away now you can see what has to fit inside those fingers. So there's the extremity there on that side, and the ball and the palm on this side, I have to shorten that up a little bit as well. So how do you make a round? Well, you make it square. Okay, and once you get the parameters established, then you can knock off the edges, make it 8-sided instead of 4-sided, and then just round it off. So now the distance between the palm of his hand or the fingers to the top is your maximum width that you can have, right? So work that in. If you want to make it a bit smaller, make it a smaller ball, then you can do it. But establish your parameters first. Get the square established before you get the round. Okay, and we'll do that. Okay, so there it is, more or less squared up. So there's the bottom, there's the top, and so I've got, the distance is more or less rounded. So now knock off the corners. And right away, we haven't rounded it up and over yet, but if you go straight in, that'll create all the parameters you need. So there it is with the corners knocked off. So now we can start rounding the ball the other way. So there's the ball, more or less shaped. So now you can start to create this meaty part of his hand in here. You know how we've got this meaty part in here, and so you can create that shape in there, and then that tucks into the wrist. So you might have a better view of it here. And this likely could still have a little bit more taken out in here too to create the more defined wrist. Then work his way up the arm. Now there is a notch in where the sleeve would end up if you're going to put this short sleeve shirt on them. So there is a measurement there established. On the other side it's a little bit lower, but same idea. And so you can start shaping that and get the arm turned around in here. So use that number 3 or number 5 to start to create the round shape in here for the meaty part of his hand. And then you can hollow out more in there for the wrist. Where are we there? So that just defines the edge of the wrist a little bit better. So the meaty part in here, and then the wrist, and now come up the arm, and you can see where the separation between the body and the arm has to come up in here. So a V-tool in there will solve that problem. Don't be afraid to be a bit aggressive here, because we got to turn that body around the arm. So right away you start to see the arm and the arm muscle in there. Okay. So let's look at the way the wrist and the forearm comes into the glove, and you can see I've got too much material here in order for that to work. So where we worked on the hand first and then made on the one on the back, we worked on the hand first and then we made everything else kind of work to it. In this situation, I'd be inclined to work on the forearm at least and down to the wrist, so that then I can find the exact spot where the wrist meets the glove, and then from that, then I can drop it in and make the glove come back out and over. So it's obvious right away that, first of all, the width from side to side is too much, and I need to have this depressed here. And you can see where on the diagram it looks like it's just inside the edge of the body. Well, we've got the edge of the body identified, so that can be moved in maybe a little bit further, create a little bit more length with the arm by putting a V cut through there. So I'll go ahead and get that set up. Okay, so there's the notch, and notice I made it all the way around. So now I'm going to work on the forearm here to come into that notch. So can you see how much I've taken off the material in the arm here? I've taken off a substantial amount. I left the meat part of the arm and it tapers down a little bit narrower to the wrist. Likely do more later on, but that creates that stop there, and the forearm is established right away. So now I've got to leave a little bit of a ridge on the glove, but can you see in the diagram that it tapers right down? So I'm going to just create an outside shape. The highest point would be about there and then come down into the wrist. So the highest point would be right about there and come down into the wrist. And just take a shape, take a good view as to what the shape of the bottom of the glove, the bottom of the glove is. See how that bottom of the glove comes around, and it comes in just about parallel to the arm, whereas the top part where the thumb would be is up and over. So we got to create that angle going up there, but a flatter shape on the bottom. So again, two motions here, get the shape around as well as the shape on the bottom and the top going. So there it is with the roughed out shape. I've left an edge here that can be rounded over a little bit later on, but the general shape is there, so it's rounded down into the wrist, as well as more of a flat edge across here and up and over here for the thumb. Might want to take a little bit more off of there to make it a little bit flatter, but that'll give you the general shape of the outside of that glove.